Welcome to computer class. Today's topic is the introduction of HTML. You will learn all about the basic concepts of HTML, editors, and the attributes used in HTML. At the end of this lesson, you are expected to explain the concepts of HTML, use proper tools in creating an HTML document, and use properly the HTML attributes. HTML is everywhere on the internet. Do you think the most used social media sites in the Philippines were created with HTML? Let's check out. According to statcounter.com, in the Philippines, the most used social media sites are below. Can you name them just by their logo? Here is the first logo. Is it Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Pinterest, Reddit, or Google? What about this one? Is it Twitter, Pinterest, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Google, or Reddit? And this one? Is it Twitter, Reddit, Google, Pinterest, YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram? How about this? Is it Google, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, or Reddit? And lastly, is it YouTube, Google, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, Reddit, or Facebook? And also, tell me what you think about websites. Can you give me your most visited websites that are not considered as a social media? And how important do you think are websites nowadays? Let's check out the concept of web scripting by watching this video.
Every web page on the internet uses HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Think of them as the foundational coding languages of the internet. Just like how Belgium has 3 languages, French, Dutch, German, web pages also have languages. In the case of websites, their languages are HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Sure, you may have heard of them, but do you really know how they work? Web development is what you see when you go to a website. I call them tres amigos. HTML is hypertext markup language, or the builder. CSS is cascading style sheets, which I consider the artist, and JavaScript, the wizard. They're all different languages and work differently, but HTML, CSS, and JavaScript need one another to make a website. Imagine you want to code this homepage using HTML, but just HTML. HTML essentially would define all the content, the text, the images, the links, but without CSS, the artist, and without JavaScript, the wizard, an HTML-only website would look like this. CSS adds the styling to a website. CSS can't live without HTML, or else there's nothing to style. It's responsible for outlining the colors, the fonts, and the positioning of content. Your website will now look like this. Now we come to JavaScript, the wizard. Pop-up error messages, the auto-completes that you use, that is all JavaScript. Now that you understand how it works in the 3 amigos, here are 3 things to remember about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. 1, they make up what is called front-end web development. Front-end web development is what you see when you land on a page, as opposed to back-end web development is actually what makes an application on the web work. 2, web browsers like Firefox and Chrome translates these 3 languages into the visual web page. Without a browser, these languages are just words on a page. Sometimes, because of this, websites look slightly different on Chrome, Firefox, and definitely look different on Internet Explorer, because all of these browsers translate a little differently. 3, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are constantly evolving. It's just like any language. These coding languages have a history. They've been around for a few years now. Right now, the standard language procedures for HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are called HTML5. There's even a body and a society online that manages the rules and best practices of how to build for front-end web development. So in the beginning, you actually had HTML controlling a lot of visual aspects. You used a bold tag to make text bold, used a center tag to make your text centered. But over time, after the 90s, you actually had CSS making up most of that. In the beginning, JavaScript was mostly for pop-ups, and now it animates most of our websites. So whatever you see on the World Wide Web, you have those tres amigos to thank for it.
Web pages are created by designers using languages like HTML or Hypertext Markup Language. These languages are used to tell browsers how to display your web page. HTML is a standard markup language for creating web pages. It describes the structure of a web page, and it consists of a series of elements. HTML elements tell the browser how to display the content, and it is not case sensitive. As for those who are already familiar with different kinds of programming languages have case sensitive codes. Unlike HTML, it is not case sensitive. So, where do we write our HTML elements? We use text editors such as Notepad for Windows user and TextEdit for macOS users. There are other different kinds of text editors that you can use when creating or writing an HTML file, but for beginners, I suggest to use these kinds of text editor. When writing an HTML file, make sure to follow the HTML syntax. We use tag name of an HTML element and a content in between the start tag and end tag of your HTML element. Here are some examples of HTML element used as an HTML statement. We use the HTML element of heading 1 and a paragraph to create these two statements. As you can see in the start tag, we use the tag name h1 for heading 1 and p for paragraph. Next to it is the content of your heading and paragraph. And lastly, the end tag that has a / before the tag name. End tag will tell the browser that the statement has ended. Remember that for paired tags such as heading 1 and paragraph, never forget to put the end tag since this is the correct way of writing a paired tag. Here is the example of a structure of an HTML file. The first line will indicate that your file is an HTML5 version. After that is the HTML element. Inside it is the whole HTML document you are creating. Inside it is the head element that contains the meta information of your HTML file. Inside the head element is a title element. This specifies the title of your HTML page. Next is the body element that contains all of the visible content of your HTML page. And those visible contents are the heading 1 and paragraph. HTML elements can contain other elements or what we call nested HTML elements. And here is what it looks like. After finishing an HTML file, you would want to see how your web page would look like. Remember that everything you encode in the Notepad or TextEdit are the script of your web page. You can now use a web browser to read and interpret your HTML file and view what your web page would look like. To see a step-by-step procedure on how to write your first web page with Notepad or TextEdit, watch this short video.
Let's start. First, we need to open the Notepad, which can be seen in all apps in Start menu. And if you can see the Notepad in all apps, just click the search icon or search bar on your computer and type Notepad and click it. In my case, since I'm using Notepad regularly, I already pinned it on my Start menu for an easy access. Now that we have opened the Notepad, we can start creating an HTML file. First, I will declare what version of HTML I'm creating using the doctype declaration, and to be followed by the HTML tag. Inside this tag is the whole HTML file. The first part of your HTML file is the head, to be followed by the body. Inside the head is the title of our HTML file. And for the body, we will input the contents of our web page. In this case, our contents are a heading and a paragraph. Now that our HTML file is complete, remember to always declare what version of HTML you're writing for the browser to interpret it correctly. Also, to write your HTML file with the correct structure using the HTML tag, head tag, title tag, and body tag. And of course, the contents of your web page. To save your work, click File on the menu bar and click Save. A dialog box will pop up and it will require you to name your file. Don't forget to use .html at the end of your file name as your file type. Make sure that the encoding is at UTF-8, then click Save. Now go to the folder where your file was saved, and as you can see, it is in the web format. Now double-click and a web browser with your web page will open. On the left side of the screen is your HTML file, while on the right side is your web page. You can see that the title we put in the head of the HTML file is in the title tab on the browser. And as for the contents of the web page, we can see that in the body elements of the HTML file.
Headings in HTML has 6 levels, H1 being the most important heading, and H6 being the least important heading. As you can see, H1 has the biggest size, and H6 has the smallest size. While HTML paragraphs are defined with p tag name. As you can see in the below image, no matter how much paragraph you want, p tag name was always used. There are no levels when it comes to paragraph, unlike in headings. As for HTML links, they are defined with an A tag name or what we call anchor tag. The href or href or what we call hypertext reference was used as the container of a link's destination. It is an attribute that is used along with HTML elements. And for HTML images, they are defined with img tag name. Images also use attributes such as src or source file, alt or alternative text, and width and height for size of an image. Remember that HTML elements with no content are called empty tags. A good example of an empty tag is br, or what we call a line break. This type of HTML element has no end tag. And lastly, HTML attributes. Remember that all HTML elements can have attributes. They are the additional information about elements, and it's always specified in start tag. To summarize this lesson, watch this short video clip.
And today I'm going to be talking to you about HTML. Computers use language to communicate just like people do. And the way computers communicate with the internet is through a computer language called Hypertext Markup Language, or HTML. Hypertext is the process of linking objects to each other so that when one object is clicked, the linking object can be viewed. And the Hypertext Markup Language was created by Tim Berners-Lee in 1990 so that the hypertext could be used through the internet. web pages doesn't make you a programmer. Instead, the hypertext markup language contains a series of markup tags that are used to classify and group elements in a web page. A web browser then reads these markup tags and translates them into what we visibly recognize as a website. Most web browsers allow you to view the HTML code for any web page. For instance, in Firefox you can hit Ctrl-U on Windows or Command-U on a Mac to bring up the web page source. You'll probably notice some words surrounded by angled brackets. These are the markup tags. All web pages must consist of certain markup tags before they can be legitimately considered web pages. These are the HTML tag, which tells the browser that it's reading an HTML page, the head tag, which contains scripts, the page title, and meta information for search engines, and the body tag, which contains the visible web page content. For the most part, each tag has a corresponding closing tag so that the web browser knows when to stop reading the tag. Tags can also have attributes that add extra parameters to the element, like styling attributes such as color, alignment, and things like that. These are generally denoted by having the attribute name, an equal sign, and then the attribute value in quotation marks. There are many options out there for creating websites. Some are free and some are very expensive. Programs such as Dreamweaver allow you to drag and drop what you want, where you want it, without ever having to see an ounce of code. These editors are called WYSIWYG, or what you see is what you get editors. But to code a website from scratch, all you really need is a text editor such as Notepad for Windows or TextEdit for Mac, and a web browser, and that's it. So that's pretty much the basics of what HTML is all about.
Let's have some exercises. For skill workout 1.1, using a text editor, create an HTML file of a web page of you introducing yourself. Use proper structure of an HTML document. Submit the Notepad file as your output. This is due on September 1 at 3 p.m. And for skill workout 1.2, in a new HTML document, answer and explain with images the question, how are you feeling now that you are learning online? Use attributes and proper structure of an HTML document. Submit the Notepad file and a screenshot of your web page as your output. Submit on or before September 1 at 3 p.m. For your first quiz, copy and answer the following questions below in 3 to 5 sentences by creating an HTML document. Use proper HTML elements, syntax, and structure. How does a text editor different from WYSIWYG? How do you think websites are affecting our everyday lives? In the situation that has been going on lately, imagine the world without markup languages. What do you think is our situation now? Submit your output on or before September 1 at 3 p.m. Good job, everyone. Keep up the good work. Till next time.